celebrity allure of entrepreneurship, many exceptional entrepreneurs remain shadowed. Here, I team up with these hidden talents to unveil their challenges and successes. Dive in with me to unearth entrepreneurial gems, learn from our experiences, and get educated. All right. Okay. We are back. Back from our bathroom break. It's interesting, like everything that you said and that we talked about. And I just want to make sure that the listeners, when they go back and they're listening to this, that they don't pre-frame like, oh, it's the landscape industry. It's not the industry that I'm in. I said, because like all these things are relevant to every industry, or at least every industry that I've been in, and I've been in a few. And so, this is such a helpful podcast in terms of like the hands-on information that you're providing to people in whatever their industry they're in. So saying that, you go from landscape industry to being notably, and I don't know if anybody missed it, but you were in the top 100 of your industry, top 100 of your industry in North America. Yep. Of an industry, how many people are in this industry at any given time?
There's about 200,000 tax-paying companies.
Yeah, so 300,000 in that industry, especially in the States. So 200,000 tax-paying industries, and you're in the top 100. That, guys, is a notable piece when you consider where this advice is coming from. You go and you start creating a software inside your own business. So I'll let you kind of explain it, because we kind of pre-framed it at the end before we went on our bathroom break, but maybe you could just pre-frame this.
Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately I needed software, and I had been teaching other landscapers just in my area how to budget, how to estimate, just through my trade association. So we ended off on mentoring. And so those mentors that had helped me in my early 20s taught me a few really key things. And so, by 10 years later, I was teaching those same things to others in my industry, which, So I was actually teaching people how to create budgets, how to do estimating, and how to, create hiring processes and things like that. So I was speaking at trade shows and, association events and whatnot. So, and I was getting a lot out of that. I always felt like I was going there to teach, but I always left much, much smarter than when I arrived. I was learning more by teaching than I was anywhere else. And so I really started to gravitate toward teaching. I'd have a room full of 50 people for 2 days to teach budgeting and estimating. And I'd leave with 10 new growth techniques for sales and marketing, because these were really brilliant people in the room. They just might not have been great at estimating and job costing, for example. And so I was learning a lot. Keep in mind, I'm still in my 30s here, like early 30s. Teaching, but learning as I'm teaching. And so the more that I would share, the more people would give. And I'd always kick off every event by saying, hey, listen, this is collaborative. I'm just here to guide everybody. But the truth is, I'm going to learn as much as you. And I still say that every time I kick off to this day. And I speak, 100 days a year. And every time, and I don't speak for an hour, I speak for a day. And so when I spend the time with people, I'm there to learn. I'm there to observe what they see, and I'm there to learn from their experiences. And I'm always building that pattern recognition. And as I do that, I build better products to service the industry, to solve industry problems, because I'm there. And so that's why I do that 100 days a year, which is unusual for a CEO with as many employees as I have, to spend 100 days a year with my customers and 100 days a year with my employees. And so that's where I started out. I said, my customers and my employees matter. And so if I spend half my time with each, then I can actually give each the attention that they need, and I'll understand my employees and I'll understand my customers. Then I can build great products that serve those customers and build great teams that build the products and serve those customers. And so that's just how I choose to spend my time. And I think ultimately, as I was building software, what I kept always thinking about in the early days was, if I could solve the technology gap that existed in the business for me, then I'd solve it for others. And at my size and scale and speed of growth, if it worked for me, then it was certainly going to work for others. So I had the confidence that if the product I built solved my major problems, then it would be valuable. And so if nobody ever bought software, I was kind of okay with it because I knew I was going to keep scaling my business. But what ended up happening is I got my first 300 customers in the first quarter that we started selling software.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was incredible how fast it took off. And the way that it took off was through education. And still to this day, that's how we largely sell software. We do lots of marketing like everybody, but we typically actually use marketing to get people to attend education. And then we teach them what they don't know about business so that the need for technology becomes clear. Because when you just try to tell people, hey, I've got software that'll fix this problem, but they don't understand what the problem is. They don't really see the value in taking maybe 2 steps back to fix the foundation so they can build, a proper business. And that's really, you mentioned that earlier with the concept of the technicians who are great at what they do, but they go to run a business and it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is they've only got 50% of the skill set. They've got the technical side, but they don't have that financial side. And so I had that same problem as I kicked off. I was just lucky enough to find some really good mentors. And I know you don't believe in luck, but I think I was kind of lucky in that scenario. I asked around. So, I had the wherewithal to ask. But I really did stumble on a few great people because I didn't go through 10. The first few that I met were incredibly helpful. And so when I went to build software, what they had taught me, I had been teaching. I actually took what they taught me on pen and paper and built software that helped everyday average technicians who don't know anything about financials. I helped them learn how to build a budget. And our budgeting software was the first thing we launched. I could help somebody build a budget in about 5 hours that would allow them to see into the future. They would see the year in front of them. They knew what the revenue would be, how much they could afford to pay their staff, how much they could spend on their cost of goods sold, their overhead, how much gross profit and net profit would be left in the business. And once I built that, I layered in estimating that automatically would mark up their work so they would price their work properly. So now you've got this amazing technician who can see into the future, plan a successful year, and price every job in a way where they're going to get that outcome. And so that allowed people to understand my goal setting model, which I just would go out and teach people goal setting and teach people how to break goals down to a job level, which is really, on a landscape project, it's estimated versus actual hours. If I tell you I'm going to build a beautiful backyard for $1 million, and I know that I've got 10,000 labor hours to do it, if it takes 20,000, I'm going to lose my shirt. So all I need to do is take those hours, break it down by task, tell the people who do the work, and they can self-guide themselves. They know what success looks like. And so I built a software to do that so that technicians could sort of break out of the fear of growth and make it really calculated in a way where they understood their financials, they could set goals, they could share the goals with everybody in the company and build a culture where the way it is that, we do great work for great customers and we pay our staff a fair wage. And that, as you've heard many times, That's my belief in business. So I just built software that did that. And then I just made it my business to teach people why they need that software. It's all about the why.
So I just maybe glean out a couple of distinctions that I'm catching from this, just for the listener and actually truthfully for myself as well, because I'm a student as much as you are. It's the one thing I love about this podcast, because every time I get to sit across the table from somebody who is smarter than I am, I'm going to, suck in a whole bunch of information. And that's different experience. Well, yeah. And mostly in my case, it's smarter. No, you're right. It is about different experience. So a couple of things that I glean out of that is one, I even right out of the gate, I'd say my thought process when you said, I do believe in luck, obviously, but you went out and did what 98% of the people won't do, is you went out there and asked for somebody to mentor you. And then, call it luck, call it grace. Grace showed up and the right person or a person came and you created the right opportunity from it. And I mean, yes, lucky, yes, bumper sticker, but you still had to go out and ask somebody, and that takes a lot of courage. And I'm don't want to sound like I'm beating a dead horse here, but I can't tell young people enough. A perfect example of it was we had my second cousin on the show a few episodes back, Charlie Kerrigan. For those of you who have heard that, if you haven't heard it, you should listen to it. I'm not plugging my podcast, I'm plugging him. Unbelievable kid, 17 years old, but you were kind enough to help him with some of your software, bring him into, your one of your programs. And he responded and told me, like, by the way, I'm sure he told you, but he thought it was amazing. What you guys are doing is unbelievable. He said it's going to help him so much. So that's one piece. The other is the other pieces to take away from what you were saying was the importance of understanding your numbers, and understanding we'll call it the accounting of your business, and the accounting of, in the landscape industry might be a little bit different from, the restaurant industry or the software business. Yeah. The software business. Right. I mean, but the concept of the accounting is what you have to understand. Yeah. And so for you guys out there that, don't understand your numbers, you got to understand your numbers. Most people will, at the end of the year, they get their financial statements. And if the financial statements are good, they have one drink. And if the financial statements are shit, they have two drinks. And that's their understanding of accounting. And so that's the other thing that I take away from that. And then the pursuit of excellence and really refining that skill inside your business, which then really propelled you off in a completely different area. And it has just exploded. And it's got to be, I don't know how many times bigger it is than your landscape business, but I know it's a lot. Can you just kind of add in, can you give us some context of the mental shift, the psychology in the process of evolving from landscape? And you did landscape for how many years?
20 years.
20 years?
Yeah.
She did landscape for 20 years, and now you're moving into this, whole new field. And obviously it was a transition over time, but there had to be some psychology shifts there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I transitioned from being a full-time landscaper to becoming a full-time software business owner over 10 years. So that happened sort of gracefully. But during those 10 years, the landscape business was still growing. And I really started to find that I was gravitating more and more toward the software company. And I could see that the impact that I would have on the industry would be more fulfilling to me than continuing to just grow the landscape business doing what I was doing. And so it became more purposeful. So just like when I left the nuclear industry, it was because of purpose. And when I decided to leave the landscape industry, it was for that same reason. I just started to feel like there wasn't enough purpose in my day running that business. And by that point, I could have retired, and I decided, that I didn't want to retire. I had some really great offers on the software business, and I decided I'd leave the landscape industry, focus on the software business, and just really take that to a completely different level, build much better products, serve a much wider audience, and really put a lot more of my own sort of passion and mental capacity into one thing. And when I did that, that was a game changer in itself. But what I found myself quickly realizing is that there was some other things missing for me personally that I had missed along the way in my growth trajectory in business. And it was, not focusing enough on myself, not setting personal goals, setting business goals, and not really seeking enough personal growth. And so that all sort of hit me in around my 20th year in business. And so that really became that mindset shift that you're talking about. And so I started setting personal goals.
Can we maybe talk a little bit about this? Because you were like abusing yourself in you were on the go all the time. The weight you've lost, like, dude, you look amazing. I said this to you a few weeks before Christmas, and like, you look fantastic, man. And kudos to you, because kudos to you on a whole bunch of levels. Like, you could have taken just the quick, easy money, and it was, I remember us talking about it at the time when you were kind of rolling in out of landscape and into software. And I know that it was like, you could easily retired and never worried about anything ever again in your whole life. And you stuck with it. There's a couple of things I'd love to roll back on. One, we talked earlier about the business grew. I think you'd said from 100 to 200 people, kind of culture got away from you. From my personal experience, I've been in that, kind of realm before. And I found myself frustrated. I use words like frustrated, pissed off, angry. I'm only using them for myself. Yeah. I'm not putting words into your mouth, but ultimately,
my word's overwhelmed. It's like you like, I got to the point where I just felt really overwhelmed with the volume of things that were happening in the business. And what I didn't realize at the time is I thought I was overwhelmed with the business, when in fact I was just overwhelmed with myself. It wasn't the business. And I think a lot of business owners are actually more overwhelmed with themselves than the business. They can't find the clarity because their frontal cortex is so jammed up with so many bits of information, and there's not enough clarity on the personal side of things. There's not enough time in the day. You can't be the best husband, and you can't be the best father, and you can't be the best son, and you can't take care of your physical health. And so when those things aren't there, then the business stuff starts to feel out of control, but maybe the business isn't out of control at all. Maybe it's you. That's right. And so
that's what I learned too.
And so as I learned to set personal goals, everything became easy. I had 140 pounds to lose. And it was very easy to lose the 140 pounds. People say, hey, like, how the hell did you do that? And I said, well, for the first time ever, I just decided to set a goal related to myself. And so when I did that, it was easy because I'm a very disciplined person. How did I get to be that overweight? Not by being not disciplined. I was super disciplined in every other way in my life, but I was so disciplined about the business goals that I didn't care about my personal goals. I didn't have them. Right. And so once I set them and I said, hey, listen, my goals are simple and they don't really change that much year to year. They've been the same for the past few years. Number one, I'm going to prioritize my mental and physical health. Goal number two is I'm going to prioritize my romantic relationship. Number three, I'm going to focus on my kids, and I'll be a great son and a great brother and whatnot. So that's my family relationships. And number four, I'll be a great CEO. And the first 20 years of my business career, it was reversed.
And then you were a good CEO, but you never had enough time to get to the other ones.
No.
Yeah.
Ruined a marriage, completely, did not spend enough time with my kids when they were super young. I didn't have enough time with my parents and my family. Spent no time taking care of myself. Stopped exercising. I was very fit as a kid. I played a lot of hockey all through my 20s. Even into my early 30s, I was still very fit because I was a landscaper. But then as the business grew, 10 pounds a year for 10 years, 12 years, 13 years, and now there's the weight, right? And it gets harder and harder to show up every day with the energy that you need and with the mental clarity that you need when you're fighting your physiology. And so then that starts to set in on your mental side. And so everything starts to feel like a bigger obstacle than it absolutely is. And so I think when you flip that around and when you really focus on setting goals for yourself first, then you can show up every day the way you need to for yourself and for those that are around you and for your business. And so ultimately, that's just how I live my life now. And so and that goal setting model that I talked about, set a goal and break it into quarters, it was easy for me to lose weight. All I did was seek out a mentor, ask a few basic questions. Hey, what do I need to do to lose this weight in 1 year? He said, well, it's almost impossible, but I think you can do it. And I said, well, what do I need to do? And when he said, eat 1,000 calories a day and exercise 5 hours a day, and you'll lose the weight. It was kind of simple. And so just like everything else that I've ever done in business, I just put that in my calendar, just like I do with my staff today, like I described earlier. So it was 2.5 hours of exercise in the morning, which meant I had to get up at 5. And there was 2.5 hours at the end of the day, which meant I had to have the discipline to do that after a long day, regardless of whether I was flying and traveling or working or speaking for 10 hours or whatever it was. And so I just did it. And when I started doing it, the results were there. I was losing the weight exactly at the pace that mathematically any nutritionist in the world can do that math. It's standard math.
BMI.
And so every week, every month, I would just hit the next milestone, and that incremental improvement, that's where happiness lives, right? And so success is there. I'm hitting that milestone, and I just kept doing it until the weight was gone. And that's no different to me than if I'm trying to grow people in my business. If I put the time into growing people, if I'm setting strategy, setting goals, if I put the time into doing those things, then the clarity is going to be there. And then the activity is just a matter of us calendaring and having the discipline to stick to that calendar every day. And the result is just there waiting at the end.
I am in 100% agreement. And I'm going to also play devil's advocate for the listener out there that's going, yeah, but you were already successful. You had already spent 20 years and made a bunch of money. So you had whatever their perception is, maybe you had a car, or you had the house, or you had whatever, vacation properties, you were doing whatever.
And that's all true.
So I'm wondering, so here would be the question for those listeners. And I've been thinking about this a lot myself because I have kids at the age now that are kind of coming in, they're starting into their career. And it's like, I went through a very similar experience to you. I'm not going to share mine because I think you did it so eloquently. But what's your advice for the younger person who wants to start a business, or they have a family and they're torn between spending that time in their business to try to make it successful? And truthfully, like I know from my experience, I mean, part of being successful in the business was to be able to provide for my family. And that's a big story I would tell myself,
Yeah. But the problem is, in my case, I told myself that story in the early years to put the sweat equity in, which I believe in, right? Not everybody's going to start a business and work 5 hours a day like the social media influencers tell you. Like, you gotta put the work in. But I will say this: at some point, you got to stop telling yourself that you're working all these hours and you're doing all of this for the people that you love, because they want your time. They want you more than they want the business outcomes. And if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you get to the point where you don't need more money. And I got there, but I kept going deeper and deeper and deeper. And that was impacting my happiness. It was impacting the happiness that I had in my romantic life, the happiness that I had in my family life. And then it impacted me as an ability to show up as an incredible CEO.
Yeah. What do you think what was happening? You get to a point where you've got enough money, clearly, but you keep going in, keep doing more, and keep driving, keep whatever. What do you think how is it serving you or meeting your needs, or whatever philosophy you want to subscribe to? What do you think was driving you to do that and then what ultimately made you go, okay, wait a second, I need to make some change?
Yeah, I think what happens is we're creatures of habit. My habit was to build a business, grow a business. And then I had a second business. I'm going to build that one. I'm going to grow that one. And, for 10 years in my 20s, before I had kids, I would grind. I would work a lot of hours. It was 6 a.m. until 10 p.m, 7 days a week. And I was happy doing that. I was very, very happy doing what I was doing. And you have kids and you try to cut back on weekends and whatnot. And I thought, hey, if I'm around on the weekend, that's good. And then, you take on some more business and things, get challenging. So anytime they're challenging, my habit was to just work more. I'll work harder. I will not ever fail on a goal. I'm going to work harder. And so I think what happened is I got so used to that, my neurological pathway was I'm going to work harder, and I'm doing this for the people around me. I'm doing this for our future. And so I think I may have been playing the long game so well that, I couldn't see what was happening right in front of me. And I know I played the long game well, because that long-term vision became a reality for me. But I think there's a way to also sort of live in the moment. And I think when it really hit me was when I realized that I had ruined a marriage, when I looked in the mirror and I wasn't happy, when I could buy anything essentially that I wanted, park it in the driveway or pull up to a new house and not be happy. I think that was really when it hit me. And it all sort of came about in 1 year. And I would say that was the biggest gift of my life is just seeing that.
God bless you, man. That's awesome. I mean, it's fucking fantastic that as many people they don't go through that. They don't really make that distinction. And then, they go through a second or a third marriage or or die of a heart attack or some stuff like that. So congratulations, man. That's, and I know it is a revolutionary change from where you are today, from the man I see to the man I, met and knew for the first kind of 10 years that I'd known you. It's awesome. It's amazing. So we've kind of talked about the culture that I was calling it frustrated, but I think you really succinctly kind of covered that. You used the word overwhelm, and then you kind of start making this transition into this software CEO in a business. Really, you're starting from scratch again in terms of your intelligence in the industry.
Yeah.
So kind of what was the first what is the first thing, that you kind of went into and went, oh boy?
I mean, there was so many, I wouldn't know where to start. Like, honestly, deciding to build software was, as you said, it was kind of like looking into, a dark hole, really. I had no idea what I was getting into, but I knew that I was going to figure it out. And so the first few years, it was like learning how to develop software and find the right people. And I was very fortunate to have a co-founder that had worked with me in the landscape business that really understood software engineering. He had a background in software engineering. He's still with me today, and he's the CTO at LMN.
Oh, so, I didn't know that. Oh, yeah, that's great. Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's cool.
From day one.
Because he started you guys started off on an Excel spreadsheet or something, didn't you?
Yeah.
That's absolutely. What I thought. Yeah. So he would have been.
Wireframed. That was back in, 5 years before we started building software. He joined my landscape company to run all of the technology and sort of weave everything together so that we could continue to scale. And we decided to build software. He's been leading the technology side of it since. So that really, again, seeking out the expert and treating them fairly is the key. And so I knew that was never going to be my thing. And so what I tended to focus on a lot was like education, the customer, and the employees. And so where I spent a lot of my time really sort of evolving and learning in those earlier years was seeking out mentors, right? We're back to the same conversation. I joined a tech incubator, and I spent a large amount of time there. And keep in mind, by this point, I had hundreds of employees in my landscape company, but I'm hopping in the truck and driving to Waterloo to learn what I didn't know from people who had done it before. And when I went down there to be interviewed for the program, they quickly realized who was doing the interviewing. I had enough mentors to know that I was selective, and so I interviewed them. And halfway through the interview, they said, "Welcome to the program." But they were good mentors.
How did you turn the tables on that? Like,
just they were asking me, all the questions to get in, but I started asking them like, what their background, the leaders of this program, like, hey, what have you done? Like, you're asking me, and I'm telling you where I'm at, but what have you done? And what makes you the authority that I'm going to learn from? And so politely, very politely, but 6 months later, I hired one of those people that were the mentors there to come to work as my chief revenue officer for the next 5 years, right? And so you find the people when you seek out mentors. And so I was always looking for that kind of information. They said one day, hey, do you want to compete in a pitch competition in front of investors? And I said, well, no, I'm not looking for investment. And they said, well, hey, you're in the program, and we promise these investors, they fly in from all over the world to do this pitch competition. We just want you to do a pitch, even though you're not raising. And so I did the pitch, and I won the pitch competition, and it was $100,000 prize. And I wasn't raising, so I didn't want to take the $100,000. So when they handed me the check, I handed it to the guy next to me who was a young kid who needed the money. I didn't need the money. And I gave him the check and said, yeah, I wasn't raising. I just came to pitch because I need the practice, right? Right. And Google happened to be there, and they were taking companies into sort of their own incubator program. And I got into that program probably as a result of that. And so then I was able to go and work with, all the Googlers in Toronto and sort of do an internship of sorts with them for 6 months that sort of stretched out over a year. And I learned a lot from them. And so they taught me a lot about digital marketing and how to actually optimize the products that we were building to really scale. And so I focused there for a while. And then once I sort of went through that exercise, then I started to learn more from other consultants that I'd hire along the way, or maybe it was an agency that I would seek out. But I would only hire the agency because I wanted to learn how they would scale if they owned the business. And so I always try to hire people based on results so that I get their best work. But I'm always hiring somebody to learn what they know. That's why I hire people.
Right.
And so everything's an interview, in my opinion. If I'm hiring an agency, if I'm hiring a consultant, if I'm hiring a contractor, if I'm hiring an employee, I'm always looking to learn from them. And so as I scaled out the tech business, what I was always doing is saying to the people around me, if we're going to hire somebody, make sure they know something we don't. And so when we interview people, we're interviewing people to find people who know something we don't, who have done something that we need to do. And they're going to take us where we want to go. And we won't get there on our own because we don't have those patterns yet. And when we take all of that information and we have all these new patterns and we weave them all together and we build our own recipe, if we're intentional enough about it and passionate about it enough, then we'll be the best. But we have to be intentional about who we take advice from and then how we apply that recipe. And so as I built the software company, I just always kept that in mind every day. Who do I need? Right.
Yeah, because I mean, that's great advice to any CEO, because I think a lot of people, I've certainly made this mistake, is, mistakes I've made before in the past, or I hire somebody that I think can execute my plan, not help create a better plan. And that's a critical mistake that a lot of CEOs make. And I just want to maybe draw so that maybe you could add to this if I'm missing anything. So as you're launching this software company, it sounds to me like you're using the same fundamentals that you used, when you started your landscape business, which was focus on good employees, learn, be a student, which is what you did when you went to the Google, incubators. Thank you. The incubator in Waterloo. So you really humbling, you're a pretty wealthy guy at this time. You don't need to be you could have sent somebody, you could have sent a high level representative, which, some people might do, but you were like, no, I got to know this and I'm going to be the student and I'm going to start right back at ground zero. I'm don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm just trying to clarify and so that, if somebody's got a pen and paper out, they're capturing the real essence of, the learnings here. And then the other one was picking, being the student, but then the third one I think was picking who you want to do business with. And being selective rather than just taking the next best thing. Yeah. On the incubator side, you elevated, and I think that this kind of happens in the beginning in our 20s. I read, I don't know how many hundreds of books, hundreds of books that I read in the beginning because I didn't know anything, and nobody.
You're probably were you a C student in school or?
I was a fucking D student, dude. So, I failed out of college.
I was a C student. Many CEOs were, but what that taught me, being a C student, I don't know. I'm not the most intelligent person, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. But I was a C student because I had a really, poor attention span, And so what I got really good at doing in order to get the C, because I didn't pay attention to anything the teacher said, was turning to the person next to me and saying, hey, how did you do this? Yeah. And when they'd tell me, then I'd figure it out. And so that habit started when I was a kid. It just never stopped. Right. And to this day, I just know that's the way forward, is find somebody else that knows how to do this better than I do.
But there's a lot of people that were in that situation that would just think, oh, I don't know. And I don't want to say I'm dumb or I'm not enough or whatever. And then they create a whole different other story for themselves. So for those of you who did, like, here's a real life case, and there's Google it. There's a lot of billionaires out there that have been very successful. Not that the amount of money in your checking account is any determination of success, but there's a lot of people who have struggled in school or who have ADD or whatever bumper sticker you want to put on it, or badge or label, that have gone on to be very successful. But it sounds like those fundamental three kind of things were, student, I'm gonna select who I get to work with and the employees, and then you add in, I think the fourth one that I picked up then there was recruiting people who can really, really add value to the organization, that are going to bring the answers, that have done it before, and you're leveraging off of their experience. And
and that kind of, where I would probably wrap up on that is, I definitely don't know what I need to know at the next stage of growth in any business. So whether I'm pivoting and getting into a new business, or whether I've, just decided that I want to scale mine up, I am not the CEO that I need to be 3 years from now. And knowing that all the time means I have to constantly be a student. And in order to be a student, I have to surround myself with people who can teach me. And they may be consultants, they may be agencies, it may be an institution of some sort, or it might be my staff. And for me, I really truly believe that as you scale a business, you are a student of your best employees. And so I'm not the CEO that I need to be 3 years from now. And there's a good chance that some of the people on my executive team aren't either, at the level they're going to need to be at. Right. So I have to constantly upskill myself, upskill my people, or I have to replace them sometimes. And executive teams do transition for that reason. As a business scales, you seek people who have done what you have not done yet. And as a CEO, I've not been afraid of that. As I've found my limit, I go find somebody else who has a higher limit, and I learn from them.
Yeah. Can I just get you to pull that mic a little bit closer to you, just so people get, it'll come your way if you just give it a yank, but just want to make sure everybody hears that and catches it. But it's great advice, man. So as you're looking at, like, I know now, like, we had a conversation a few weeks ago, just private conversation, shooting the breeze. And I was kind of blown away at, for the word maybe would be innovation, the way you look at your business and how you innovate it, and how you innovate the products that you provide to your customers. It just doesn't end. And I might be putting the wrong word. I'm just using the word that kind of I walked away with it, but I'm wondering if and I don't know if you remember the conversation. We were outside cooking steaks actually, and you were just talking, and I was just like, holy shit. Like, it's really impressive how you as a CEO have really kind of, brought the business from what it started to be was hey, here's a software that's going to help you do your budgeting. Yep. Is basically what it started with. Yep. To now you are, innovative. You've innovated it to levels that I couldn't even explain on the podcast, because you were talking about it. And I'm like, holy shit, I couldn't barely keep up to the conversation. So I'm interested in talking. One, I think it's interesting just to kind of give tidbits of what you're doing, so that people can relate, but also the mindset that you have had to go through as a CEO, growing your business, and looking at it. And is innovation even the word? I don't want to put it in your mouth. You can give the word that it.
Yeah, no, I think innovation, sure. That's a valid word for sure. I think what it is for me is back to that point. I'm not the CEO I'm going to need to be, and my product isn't the product it's going to need to be. If I want the company to be the best in the world at what we do, and really change the lives and change an entire industry, $180 billion a year industry, truly change the industry and leave a legacy that makes everybody's life better who touches that industry, whether it's the consumers of those products, the employees that do the work, or the business owners that run the businesses collectively that produce that revenue. Then I need to evolve constantly, and I need to evolve that product constantly, which means I always need to be looking 3 to 5 years out. And I have to be that CEO of the future when we get there. So I have to continuously work on myself, and I have to have the product there as well. So the way I look at it is I was a different CEO at $1 million than I was at 3 million. And I needed to be a different CEO when I got to 10 million. Very different. When you're $1 million operator, you're doing the operations. When you're 10 million, you're running a business. Now it's very different. And that's why culture falls apart in most businesses, because the leader didn't evolve. And so I noticed that very quickly. I wasn't evolving. I wasn't showing up as the CEO I needed to be because I hadn't prioritized myself. And once I learned that, then I realized that I always have to be a step ahead. And that means surrounding myself with the right people and collecting the right information so that I'm ready for the next step. When you get to 10 million, you need to be a different CEO when you get to 30 million. And so there's a ones and the threes that emerges. I heard somebody else talk about this recently, and it really reminded me of this. At $1 million, I was a different CEO than 3 million. From 3 million, I was very different again at 10. When I went from 10 to 30, I needed to be a different CEO. And then to go from 30 to 100, you got to be a different CEO again. So the ones and the threes emerge. Scale changes everything. And so I have to change to be an exponential thinker to impact that many people, which means now I have to think about, what do I need to build to solve the problem of a $180 billion industry? It's a very different set of products than what I started out doing, which was to help small businesses build a budget. And so for me to be capable of doing that, what do I need to do for myself? And so I decided that it was time a few years back to take some chips off the table. And so I decided to find an investor who wanted to buy some shares. We didn't need money. We weren't injecting money into the business to fuel growth. I bootstrapped the company, and we ran the company profitably with 30% growth and a minimum of 10% profit every year since we started it. Didn't need investor money to burn to grow like every other tech company. Didn't need that, or I shouldn't say every other, but many other. I needed an investor who knew what I didn't know. And so what I decided to do was, sure, take some chips off the table, because there was a lot of enterprise value, and I wasn't living within the means that I could, where my net worth was on paper and where it was in my checking account were not adding up. Yep. So selling some shares made sense. So I didn't just sell shares based on the highest bidder. I didn't care about that, actually. Because I don't work for money. What I cared about is, who was I going to bring to the table that knew what I didn't know, and what have they done? And if they've done what I haven't done, then they're perfect for me.
Yeah, there's a repetition here in your patterns. People aren't getting this. Yep. Sorry, keep going.
And so once I had a board to report to, which I'd never had before, that's when I really started to find my shortfalls. And so as those people on the board began coaching me and pointing out what was missing in the business, at first it was a little bit hard. It was kind of hard on my ego even, having this group of 7 staring at me saying, hey, this is suboptimal, right? It takes a lot out of you.
And you're like, what are you talking about? Suboptimal. This is pretty damn good.
We're growing. Like, yeah. And yeah. But when you when I made the decisions to bring them on, it was so that they could tell me what I needed to do and who I needed to be that CEO of the future. And when I sold those shares, I in fact even agreed at that point, if there comes a time when I'm not the right CEO, it's okay if the board tells me that. That's my time to leave, because I won't know otherwise. And financially, it's okay. I can leave. So what I decided then was, whatever they tell me, I'm going to listen to, but I'm not going to listen to it blindly, because I know my customer and I know my staff and I know the product, but they know everything else that I didn't know about growing a tech company. And so I take what they tell me, put that into that pattern recognition, and I just keep trying to learn and be who I need to be at that next level. And so I'm relying on them to help tell me what's missing so that I can focus on doing what I need to do to get there. And so being feedback oriented and really having that growth mindset to really take that feedback from others who have been where you need to go or where you want to go, and really having sort of the gratitude for the advice that they give you, and really actually making those changes as they're becoming visible, like the need is becoming visible, is everything. And quite honestly, like that's what keeps me going at this point, is that continuous improvement, like unlocking that incremental improvement every single day in myself and in the people around me, so that we can serve the mission that we've set and impact the people that we serve. That's what matters. There's 1 million people who collectively work in the industry that we want to service. The 300,000 right now, that those 300,000 employees that use our software work more efficiently every day so they can actually earn more money. And in an economy, let's face it, where the middle class is all but gone, that's meaningful to me at this point. If I can continue to change that, because I put the effort into knowing what I need to do to build better products and see the future and dynamically shift and pivot our execution strategies to be what we need to be in the future, because I'm open to that. That is where my purpose lies at this point. And knowing that we're going to impact people while also building something that's unbelievably hard to build. That's my purpose. It's so clear to me every day. I don't ever question why I do what I'm doing. I love the challenge. I love the financial outcome, like anybody. I don't deny that ever. But I love the way that we impact all of the people we serve. And I love the way that we impact the people in our company that help us build these incredible products.
So a couple of questions that came up there. One was in regards to progress, and I mean, to me, progress is everything. And you said it very well earlier in the podcast, that, when you shifted from the original job at Hydro, you weren't seeing the progress, and that's what you needed to propel you forward. And you kept seeing this, incremental progress, growing and learning, and people can find that inside the organization if they're working towards their, I think you called them the OKRs, from What Matters Most book. I'm just kind of reviving some of these things so people get them. But if they're working towards, if they're just working for an organization, you can still have progress. You don't have to have your own business to have progress. You just have to be moving towards a direction that is going to, ultimately help you grow.
I absolutely. I mean, honestly, some of the wealthiest people that I have gotten to know have never owned their own company.
Right.
They've worked in companies that were wildly successful because they were along for the ride, and they had option plans and different things like that, so that, and which, I'm a big believer in. I use option plans with my executive team, they all share in the success at the end of the day when we sell the company or when we decide to sell shares, because they helped build it. Sure. And so you don't have to start a business to find success financially, and you don't have to start a business to find purpose in your work. You just have to find purpose in what you do. And I personally believe that if you can measure what you're doing and you can tie what you're doing each day to a goal, and you can see incremental gains, you can see that sort of path shortening to that goal one day at a time, then that propels you forward. And provided that goal is tied to a mission that you truly believe in, then I think your purpose will always be there.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to bring up, that's exactly why I wanted to bring up the point of progress. And because I want to tie it to what your belief was around purpose, because there's so many young people out there today that they hear these, thought leaders, I'll call them thought leaders, talking about, well, you got to do what's your purpose. And then, when you talk to young people, they go, well, I don't know what my purpose is. And then they go, well, if I don't know what my purpose is, then I guess I just won't try. I'll just won't try.
Yeah. And an easy way, like I have this comes up a lot. It comes up everywhere. And I'm sure you're hearing the same. And I think we live in a time where there's more mental health issues than ever because people don't understand what their purpose is. And, 100 years ago, people's purpose was very simple. They had to put food on the table. 100 years before that, they had to plant that food at a specific time and harvest it at a specific time, right? And 100 years before that, or 500 years before that, you had to go out and hunt that food.
It was survival.
Yeah. And so life has gotten really easy. Let's be honest. Yeah. What we complain that there's no middle class, but the reality is like the lowest class right now is easier than the best in the, let's face it. Like if a royal 300-400 years ago didn't have a car, right? For them to have 400 horsepower
or running water.
Exactly. And so life has gotten easy. And so at the end of the day, I think what happens is people can't find their purpose because they can't see incremental improvement. And they don't really need to go out and seek incremental improvement because life's easy. And so what I like to say when people are trying to find purpose, it's kind of simple. What do you think you could do tomorrow that would make you feel better? And their answer is usually like, well, I'm going to go to the beach, or I'm going to do something like that. And when they answer me that way, I always say, okay, well, that's good, but is that purposeful? The only purpose there is to make you happy. But what could you do that would actually make you feel happy because you've helped other people? Not tomorrow, but what could you do this year? And when they answer that question, I can almost always see their emotions perk up. Because we all share this one thing. We like helping other people. And when you ask that question and they think about it and they come up with the answer, I always say, hey, would you be happier if that happened than if you went to the beach every day between now and the end of the year? And every time it's the same answer. Well, of course it would. Okay, so why don't you make that your mission? And then why don't you just set some goals that allow you to get there? And if you don't get there in a year, maybe you didn't quite hit your goal, but you're going to get there.
But you moved forward and you made progress.
And the happiness that you would have gotten by going to the beach tomorrow, you will get that every day by finding incremental improvement along the way to reaching that goal, to serve that mission that you're on of helping somebody else. And you will be happy along the way. And if you trust that, just give it a try. If you trust that, you will see that that's where happiness is hiding. And I think, many, many people with mental health issues can break out of those issues with that simple path.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%. I think it's great advice. It's great advice. And I also think too, if you can't see a vision for helping others and you can only see the vision of helping yourself in the moment, there's nothing wrong with that. Should be no guilt and no shame in that. I know, but I wanted to bring it up because I think it's like when you've helped yourself with the intention of helping others in the future, then you've now gone, it's like, well, how did Tony Robbins become, probably the world's foremost success coach? Absolutely. I would say, and I'm not saying that because I know him, but it's like, it is what it is. But I think he'd probably tell you is like, I help myself first. I help myself grow. I help myself through mental health. I help myself through, my own business. I help myself through losing weight. I help myself through whatever it is, abused relationships or whatever. And then once you've helped one person, and now you have some context and you can help another and then another and then another. And in whatever vehicle you choose, you've chosen business and you've helped so many people, through your business, whether they're your employees or whether they're your customers or whether they're the employees of your customers. And that is, that started somewhere, like dropping a pebble in a pond, the ripples cascade out. So I think it's a great, I think your analogy around, intermittent progress that leads to purpose is phenomenal. So thanks for sharing that. I also had a couple of questions when you were talking earlier about the threes and the ones. If maybe we go, what did you have? What were some of the distinctions, specific distinctions between, the 3 million to 10 million, or if you want 1 million to 3 million, and then 10 to 30?
Yeah, $1 million business owner is an operator. You own your job. You go to work, and what you do each day results in revenue. And you ideally guide some employees to perform the work to solve a problem for a customer or build a product or sell products, whatever it happens to be. There's so many different industries. You operate. And once the business starts to scale to, let's say, 3 million, there's many, many people performing the work, whatever the tasks are in the business. And so those employees now need to know what you knew instinctively at 1 million that allowed you to get to 3 million. And so now what you do is you build systems and processes, and you deploy systems and processes to others so they can continue to do what you did really well at $1 million. And so you replace yourself with systems and processes. And so this becomes a cycle as a business owner. You're always replacing yourself. And you can't get to the next level unless you replace yourself with people and systems and processes. And so goal setting takes on a new meaning as you cross that $3 million line, in my opinion, because as I transitioned to 10 million, what I needed to be really good at then was setting really good goals that could be shared with other people so that they could use the systems and processes, but understand what success looks like for themselves day to day. And so I had to become really good at goal setting, but I had to be good at sharing those goals with other people to get to 10 million. And so now I've got systems and processes, and I've got people, and I've got training, and I've got some clarity around goals, and that got me to 10 million successfully. To get to 30 million, now we have to get good at a whole different number of things. We're scaling at a completely different level. So now we have to know how to do marketing at scale to continue to find the right customers, right? The right customers using marketing. Then we have to be really good at scaling sales processes. And now we have to continue to deliver our product at the same quality that we did way back when it was me watching at scale now with hundreds of employees. So these systems that got me to 3 million or 10 million, they're all broken. They're long gone. And all the while, technology is speeding up everything. Every year for the last 30, 40 years, technology has changed everything. It keeps getting faster and faster and faster. And so when I'm at 30 million, now I need this entirely different skill set to continue to find business and then execute that business properly and find the right people to help finish my sentences and create better sentences because I've run out of ideas. And so I've got to be an incredible recruiter. And now I need to find a way to motivate those people who know more than I do about each of these specific things. And so now my job becomes a true leader. At 30 million, I just lead. I'm not doing any work anymore. I say this every day. I don't really produce anything. I'm a visionary at this point. And so at 30 million, I have to have the vision of what the business needs in the future. And so I find what's wrong and I fix it. And so that involves finding the right people who have the right skills and truly have done this before and can prove that they've done this before. And so I have to get really good at asking the right questions to understand if this person actually can solve this problem for me. And once I got to that point, $30 million in business, to push past that, that's when I sort of really, truly realized for myself that there was something that I just didn't understand yet. There was something there. I knew that I needed to always find people, but I couldn't figure out what I needed to go to that next level. And what that is a strategy to solve a problem that nobody else in the world is going to solve better. And so learning how to be a visionary and containing your vision in a way where you're actually going to build the right product, and then you're going to put the right team around that product to solve a problem that yields enough impact on the customers that are seeking that product that they'll pay for it, and that product will continue to be in demand because it's solving problems for your customers that they cannot afford to stop solving. And so my visionary role really evolved as I got to that $30 million mark. The reason I spend 100 days a year with my customers and 100 days a year with my staff is in order for me to collect all of the pieces that I need in order to form that. I have to spend the time with the customers that have the need and the employees that are going to fill that need. And when I do that, then I can build a product that is going to solve a monumental problem. Right. And to go from 30 to 100 million, I believe you have to be able to solve problems for other people at scale, which is very different than being an operator, just solving a problem with your know-how.
Now, do you feel that is a little bit different? I don't want to spend a lot of time on the over 30 million because most of our listeners aren't in that realm. But I'm curious, do you find that's different in the service industry versus the software industry?
No, I don't, because I think there's many, many, many examples of service businesses, restaurant chains, clothing brands, retail brands, car manufacturers who have failed to build product that is valuable enough to their customer for them to be loyal customers long term. And that's what I'm describing. And the reason that happens is always the lack of vision on that CEO that set the vision for the next 5 years. And when you don't build the product or create the service or the car or the clothing or the food that somebody really wants, then what happens to your business is a slow death. And it, at scale, the slow death is usually pretty rapid. It's not as slow as people think. It happens fairly quickly. When you lose market share, when you're at scale, there's not a lot of stories about people who get it back. When you're the front runner, you need to stay there.
That's right.
And so if I'm not the visionary for my company to be able to do that, then I'm not the CEO of the company.
And somebody else should be.
And somebody else should
And
be.
you have to know when to make that decision. Or somebody, in your point, to have a board to help make that decision.
That's right.
And I would say, like, it's the one, I've put boards in place for some of my businesses. I haven't had private equity come in, but they've been just boards that I've put in, gone out, asked a few people that I know that would be on a board and help me guide my decision-making, because, you can, as a CEO, the problem with success is that you think you'll always be successful. And it's like an intimate relationship. You take it for granted. If you're not constantly innovating in your intimate relationship with the one person that you love the most, you have to be continually marketing and continually innovating, to be a better person. And, so it's really great advice. I did have another burning question. Like, we're pushing 2.5 hours here. So I appreciate your patience. You probably didn't think we were going to go this long, and truthfully, I didn't. But what's a day look like for you, so people can get some perspective on, kind of what a day or a week would look like for Mark Bradley? I'm actually interested, but I'm sure our listeners are.
Yeah. A typical day, I start my day at 5. Spend the first 15 minutes or so just like anybody, getting out of bed, having coffee, the usual. I go straight to myself, which is in my gym. And so I have a home gym so that I don't have to drive. I try to eliminate as much wasted time as possible in a day. So to walk downstairs and immediately start my workout eliminates a lot of waste. So I go through that exercise, but I do that in a pretty specific way. I start my exercise out with stretching. And while I'm stretching, that sort of 20 minutes is a good time for my gratitude session. I don't find stretching and gratitude too much. When I start to get into the hard part of my workout, I can't focus on my gratitude session. So I'm very methodical about that approach. I go through my workout just like anybody else, shower, eat, and then I'm into my block times for my day. And those vary, depending on if I'm out speaking or meeting with customers or meeting with staff. But, the core 8 hours of my day on my working days are broken up into blocks that serve those 5 goals for the company. And so I'm either spending time finding ways to grow revenue, to grow people, to build an industry must-have product, to solve that data issue that I was talking about earlier as an example, or to create thought leadership and education that's going to change an industry. And so that's all I do. It's just those things. And I create block time so that I do those things during my workday. And then when my workday ends, I have block time to make sure that those personal goals that I mentioned are woven in. And it is one life, business and personal. So I started my day working on my physical and mental health, my personal goals. Then I got into my CEO role, which was actually my last goal, but I've put a lot more time into that than anything. But then, after work, then it's time for my romantic life to put my effort into that with intention. And so there's block time for that, and there's block time for family, and it's all blocked into my entire week. But my calendar is recurring. It might seem boring to some people, but what I do is I actually design the life that I want to live in my calendar, and I calendar a year ahead. And all of that block time is there. When you look at my calendar, there's a lot of repeating things, but I know where I'm going to be every day between now and April. I don't know exactly where I'm going to be every day between now and the end of the year, but there's block time for everything. And that block time serves me first, my mental health, my physical health first. Second, my romantic relationship. Third, my family. And fourth, my CEO. And so all those blocks are worked out. So my calendar is completely blocked out from 5 a.m. until 10 p.m. each day. And the rest of the hours of the day are to sleep. And it's like that 7 days a week. I calendar 7 days a week.
You calendar 7 days a week. And sorry, so just for perspective on the recurring piece. So you recur, like a Monday looks similar to every Monday, or what did you mean by exactly by the recurring piece?
Everything's recurring meetings. So my Wednesdays look the same every day of the year. I start when I walk into my office, whether it's at home or one of my offices, I'll do the same thing. I start with my email and my Slack and my updates on Lattice, which is the same as everybody in my company. Then I do a 2-hour leadership meeting with everybody on my C-level, VP, and director level. So they're all in that meeting. One meeting for 2 hours. There's 25 people in that meeting, and we cover the company OKRs in that meeting in detail every week. Then immediately after that, I have 5 meetings. I do one for sales and marketing. I do one for product. I do one for my customer experience, and so on.
And are you running the meetings or? No, yeah, I didn't think so. Yeah.
And then as soon as those end, I do 30-minute one-to-one with each of my direct reports. I have 5 direct reports. I do 30-minute one-to-one with each of them. That's my Wednesday. That exact Wednesday is the same for all of my direct reports. They're doing the exact same thing. That's group flow. And so if I do that every Wednesday and my direct reports do that every Wednesday, we're always serving the goals. The calendar is literally the delivery mechanism, because where we spend our time and what we choose to focus on is what dictates the future. And so the calendar is truly the secret weapon. That's the vehicle to deliver the results so that we achieve the goals and serve the mission that we've set out to serve.
That is fantastic advice. I mean, that's awesome. Congratulations. Mark Bradley, thank you for being here. I think we've covered so many topics. I don't even know if I can recap them on my fingers here. So I'm not even going to try. I sincerely appreciate you being here. This advice, this insight, your thoughts and your experiences are invaluable to our listeners, to me. And I hope we can get you back at some point. We'll talk about something else that you're passionate about. Or we can answer some questions. Maybe we'll do something special with some audience members. But thank you very much for being here. I think I love just that last piece about the calendar. It's like we started off talking about the new year. I'm going to end off talking about the new year because, guys, what gets scheduled gets done. And if you want to accomplish anything in 2024, it is going to happen around your schedule. I'm a firm believer in that. And you heard it from a guy who is uber successful in all areas of his life. He is not successful in business. He is a very successful father. He's got a beautiful relationship. And I will say, like, I know your ex-wife, like we've known each other that long, and you have a beautiful relationship with her.
I do.
It's just amazing. And so, Mark, where can people find you? If
LinkedIn is easy. Just look me up there, Mark Bradley.
Mark Bradley. with Ley. It'll be on the podcast. We'll put it up on the social media stuff. Thank you so much again for being here. Really appreciate it. We're going to go have some dinner, maybe have a glass of wine or two. And thanks very much, guys, for listening. Mark Bradley, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, thanks for